This video contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning and welcome to our North Georgia location. This morning I shot a young doe, and right here where Honey's sniffing is the blood and some hair. You can see where the bullet exited. There's hair here. She ran off this way, so we'll see if we can find her. I'm sure we can with Honey helping. And today what we're going to do is skin the deer and quarter it, prepare it for processing. So if you go with me into the forest, we'll go find this deer. So here she is. Nice young deer. Good shot too, right behind the foreleg, but below the back strap. And she didn't run far, maybe 60 yards. And we followed this blood trail to her. Honey helped find her. So I'm gonna grab her by the back legs and drag her out and clean this deer. So we've hung the deer in a stout tree, about as high as I can reach. The first thing we're going to do is cut off the legs, and then we're going to make an incision to pull the skin off. I want to talk about these tools real quick. You need a good assortment of knives. I like knives that have a strong back, not a real flexible knife, a stiff knife, a strong knife. A knife this size, about a 5-inch blade, is my primary knife for what we're doing today. But having a couple options is always good. Be sure they're nice and sharp before you start. Also, I have a cleaver to break the pelvis. You could use an axe or you could use a machete. I've got a cooler to put the deer in, and I've got a bucket to catch the guts, to hold the hide and the limbs and the blood. So I'm going to sharpen these knives, and we'll start. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the legs at the joint. We're making an incision at the joint. Sometimes with a large knife you can pop through the joint, or you can use a pair of hand loppers, or if you really wanted to, you can use a cleaver. Cut through right at the joint. Feel for the joint, cut right into it. Now we'll do the bottom legs. A lot of people hang deer by the bottom legs. I like to hang them by the neck. It's easier to get the gut out. But if you do hang them by the bottom leg, hang them through this spot here. This is the heavy tendon, and this is the front bone. So people will tie usually a stick through here and hang them from the back legs. But we're going to cut this leg off. Once again, you can cut it at the joint. I'm cutting a little higher, and I'm going to use loppers to cut the bone. Also, back here on the rear legs is a scent gland. I've heard that some hunters will use the scent gland of a doe to attract bucks. Let me get another tool. Now that we have removed the legs, we're going to take off the hide. We're going to take off the hide in one piece so that it can be used to make leather. We're going to make an incision through the skin all the way to the muscle tissue around the neck, and an incision all the way down the front of the deer. An incision that bisects that one through both the front legs and through the back legs. We'll turn the deer around and start skinning the deer from the top down using gravity to help us. So the first cut I'm going to make will be right way up here. Get as high as you can reach underneath the neck. And cut down until you see the muscle. Try not to cut through the muscle. You're only cutting about maybe 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so you can see that cut all the way around. We're going to start coming down towards the belly on the underside of the animal. The white is the skin, and the red is the muscle tissue. See, I'm not cutting into the muscle tissue. As you get past the sternum bone and get to the belly, be real careful. There's a lot of gas in this belly. You don't want to bust it. So it's real tight on her belly, and as soon as you cut into that stomach, you're going to smell it. As I get down to the hams, I'm going to make an incision out of each leg. All the way down to where we remove the foreleg, like so. And I'll repeat this incision on these other 3 legs. Okay, so all the way around the neck, all the way down the center of the body, and all the way from across the legs, like so. We'll start peeling the skin from the back of the neck. Once we get about here, it should come off pretty clean. So we're going to slowly start cutting the hide away from the muscle tissue at the neck. Try to leave as much meat on the animal as you can, and just cut that scarf skin layer between the skin and the meat. That piece of meat had stuck to the skin, so I just cut it away. And now the skin's starting to come off pretty easy. Once you get down to the to the front shoulders, you can roll it off, try to slip the whole hide. You get a little more of this cut, we'll give that a roll it up so I get a good grip on it. Now a little bit of meat pulling away over here, so I'm going to cut that. It's a very healthy animal. That's fat. Now I got the hide over both front shoulders. It should be pretty easy to peel. The next thing we're going to do is remove both the front shoulders and put them into our cooler. This is the exit wound from where I shot the deer. You can see it's a lot smaller going in than coming out. The way you remove the front shoulder is you grab by the leg and start cutting the flesh next to the body. You'll feel the scapula, the big flat bone of the shoulder underneath. Just follow it on around. The front shoulders are the easiest piece of deer to remove. That's one. Yeah. Another nice front shoulder. As you can see, it's pretty bloody from the bullet, so we'll have to wash that off before we process it. But next, I'm going to remove this back strap. The back strap, also called the loin, some people call it the tenderloin, are the two large pieces of meat that follow the spine. They're easy to remove if you follow the spine bone. This is what most people consider the best part of the deer to eat. I'm going to change knives though. I could have done it with that knife, but I'm going to use this boning knife. It's a little thinner and easier to work around the bones with. So, starting at the front shoulders, I'm going to cut next to the spine. You'll make that incision right along the spine, running your fingers down till you hit the ribs. With the tip of the knife, you'll cut till you hit bone. Once you hit bone, just keep peeling away at this back strap. You'll start to notice it form a nice, long piece of muscle. And that way you know you're doing it right. As you can see, that's the top of the ribs, and that's the spine. And I'm removing the boneless piece of meat between the two, the loin. Follow that all the way down to the pelvis. You'll get a complete back strap like this. Boneless, tender, delicious. Another back strap on this side. That's the back strap removed. If this were a cow, that would be a whole New York strip. Now that we've removed the front shoulders and both of the back straps, we're going to take off this meat around the neck. It's good for grinding. It's also good for stew meat. You might even get a few pieces of cube steak out of the lower part. But I do it separate from the back strap, but you move it a similar way, following the spine on up. Some people will cut the neck through the bone and use it as a roast, called a neck roast. And I just take the meat off in a couple chunks that I usually grind into hamburger. Once again, I'm using my boning knife and I'm just taking the muscle off the bone, working down with gravity. So that's the neck roast from one side. I'd say it's about 1.5 pounds. Now do the other side. I've removed all the meat from the neck. This is all esophageal tissue right here. So far in the process, I've removed the front shoulders, the back strap, and the neck roast. And I haven't gotten into the body cavity yet. The reason for doing that is because oftentimes, if you puncture the stomach or the intestines, you'll get a strong smell. So I waited until the last to do that. We're going to remove the guts and then remove these hams. In doing so, I'll show you some of the organ meat that you might want to eat, like the liver, heart. We're going to make a shallow incision, really shallow, with just the tip of the knife, from the sternum bone down. And you can see most of the intestines here are really heavy and want to spill in this bucket. And so use your fingers to find that sternum. Make a live incision. The shallower you go, the less likely you are to punch the stomach under your head. There's the stomach. So as you can see, I nicked the stomach with the knife. We'll pull back this meat right off the rib cage. It's called the flank. Help expose this. There's a little bit of flank right there. We can put that in with our grind. This is the liver. I'm going to reach up inside, cut through. There's the bladder. Try not to bust that. So, as you can see, once you get the stomach out, it's pretty clean in there. Now, up inside the chest cavity are the lungs and the heart. The best piece of meat on the whole deer are these two inside tenderloins. That's the filet mignon right there, one on each side. They're a little bigger than a hot dog, and I'm going to take those out with this knife. The inside tenderloins are pretty easy to see. They're up against the backbone, opposite the spine and the ribs, right here. There's one on either side of the spine. And just like removing the back strap, you just cut it and follow the bone. Very tender meat. It's not like that. It's really tender. This is the filet mignon of the deer. You get two like that. We're going to put that on the grill real soon. So what we have left are these two big hams. So I'm going to use my cleaver to bust the bone in the pelvis right here. And we're going to cut back to the spine on both sides and use the cleaver to bust the spine, and then split the hams and bisect the hams into two pieces. So going on that right now. All right. I'm just cleaning up a little of the damaged pieces. I'm not crazy about this real bubbly fat on deer. It tastes a little bitter to me. I'm taking that off. But I have split the bottom part of the sternum and cut all the way to the spine. So all I have to really do now is cut through the spine, and I'll have the hams in one piece, and I'll split them on the stump over here. There's both of the hams. Now we'll split this pelvis. So now I've got the hams on this stump and a cleaver right here. I'm going to bisect them and split them into two halves. You want to clean away all this extra bloody tissue and rinse these hams off real good. Deer ham. 2 deer hams. We'll put them in the cooler now. Now that we've got our deer cut up and quartered and in this cooler, it's a good time to rinse it off with some clean water. Wash off all the blood, any fecal matter that might be on the deer, any leaves, hair. Get it as clean as you can with a hose. Sometimes you'll have little pieces of hair. Be sure to cut those off and pack it down in ice really good. Leave the drain plug open so the blood and the water from the ice can drain. Leave it overnight. Be sure to tie it down good, especially if you have predators in the area. Raccoons will get into it, bobcat, things like that. So secure your cooler overnight, and tomorrow morning we'll work on cutting this up into usable portions. So yesterday we quartered the deer that we killed and let it drain in the cooler overnight. Now I've taken the meat out. We have 2 hams, 2 front shoulders, tenderloin, one of which I already have prepared, and the neck roast and some of the other meat I peeled off that we're going to cut into stew meat. What we're going to do is make roasts and stew meat and cut our tenderloin into nice medallions. We're going to freezer wrap it, label it, and prepare it for the freezer. The first thing we're going to start with is the tenderloin, like this one. Before we start, I'm going to talk about tools. We've got a boning knife that I used yesterday that I'll use a lot today. We have our little bear tooth paring knife that I used yesterday for skinning the deer. We might use it. And I have this a little larger butcher knife that we use for cutting the hams, and a hacksaw that we're going to use to cut the bones. Remember, keep your knives nice and sharp. It'll make the work go a lot faster. So here we have a deer back strap. This is the outside, and this is the inside where we cut it off the skeleton. We'll start with the outside. You want to remove all this external tissue. You can just peel all that off. Some of this scar skin is kind of chewy, so So I'm going to come in right below it and peel it off as well. Cut off everything that you don't want to eat. Now I've got it cleaned up pretty nice. I'm going to cut it into two halves. One side I'm going to wrap whole, and one side I'm going to cut into medallions. These are nice cooked in the skillet. We're going to use freezer paper to wrap our meat to prepare it for the freezer. Start by tearing a section of freezer paper wax side up at the meat. Place the piece of meat you want to wrap. Fold the paper over it like so. Squeeze it occasionally to push the air out. A little bit of masking tape and label it. This is a deer loin. And these are ready for the freezer. Here we have both the hams of the deer, a whole ham and one that I've cut into two nice sized roasts and a good bit of deer meat. We'll take the roast off the upper part of the ham and the stew meat off the shank portion. We will start by once again cleaning up some of the scarf skin. This is that big tendon. We'll take it off and we'll cut back some of the skin, especially any kind of bloody parts or damaged parts that you see on there. We'll start by making a cut with our knife all the way to the bone. And then we'll cut through the center leg bone with the saw. Once you cut down to the bone, get your saw, position it right on the bone, and cut through it. Repeat that about 4 inches down for the next roast. It's a nice ham roast here. The shank portion, we're going to remove the bone and cut the meat into stew meat pieces. Using your boning knife, run along the bone removing the muscle from the bone. Got a big piece of skin, scar skin I'm going to take off here. This is also good meat for grinding. If you have a grinder, you can throw this in it with a little fat, either a pig or a cow. Because the deer is so lean, it needs a little fat to stick together. So this is all boneless muscle now. Go through it, cut out any chunks of fat. Usually, along with this chunk of fat here, you'll find a gland. There's a gland here, a dark color. That should be removed. It's where a lot of the, quote, gamey taste comes from, are these glands. So now I've got the glands removed. I'm just going to start cutting it into usable sized pieces. Along the way you'll run into some tendon, and you may want to remove those according to your own tastes. They can be chewy. I'm cutting it out of this piece because it's a pretty big tendon. If you're going to grind your deer into hamburger, you cut it up the exact same way. I found that grinding is a lot easier if the meat is very cold, almost frozen. So that's about 2 pounds of stew meat, ready for the stew pot. Here we have both the front shoulders. I've already boned out this one, and I have all the meat set aside. I wanted to show you how the front shoulder worked. There are 2 joints in it. You have the scapula, a joint here, and a joint here, going down to the lower leg. This is the most complicated bone to bone out because of the scapula. Most of the meat is up here on the front shoulder. So what you have to find is this ridge on top of the scapula. You can see it here, just underneath the skin. If you run your finger along it, you'll feel a hard bone. Take your boning knife, go to the front of that bone, and cut in beside it. Come over and cut it on the other side of the bone. So what I've done is I've cut down on this side and on this side. And now I'll remove the meat from the scapula. I'm piling all this meat up. We're gonna make stew meat and probably grind some of that as well. So if you run your blade along here, you can remove this muscle tissue on top of the scapula. When you get to the end, you can just cut it all the way through. You see, I'm working my blade along the bone, peeling the meat back as I go. On the back side of the scapula is some more meat. Once again, just run your blade against the bone and you'll clean that off pretty good. Around the knuckle joints, you have to use a little more care. The shank portion has a lot of tendon in it. But there's a nice piece of meat on the back side. When in doubt, just follow the bone with the tip of your boning knife, and you'll find where the meat is. I'm just cleaning up little bits of pretty meat along the bone, adding to our mix that we'll use to grind and or stew meat. So you could spend quite a bit of time picking the other little pieces of bone off, or you could just throw these two big bones into a stock pot and boil them up. That's the front shoulders, and here's a big pile of boneless meat. So lastly, we have our neck roasts and those two little flank steaks I pulled off. This is all the meat that I boned out of the front shoulders. I think the best thing to do with all this is to grind it into hamburger. So we're just going to inspect it to make sure there's no leaves on it or any kind of gut tissue or anything nasty. If you see something that doesn't look good, cut it out. These are really clean. And we're just going to cut it into reasonable sized chunks that would be acceptable to your grinder. Remember, when you're grinding deer, to grind it really cold and to grind your fat first, and only send your deer through once, twice at the most through the grinder. So we're just going to cut all this up into chunks. This is all boneless, and this will grind really nice. We would do the front shoulders the exact same way, and that is the white-tailed deer, step by step.